going to go ahead and call the meeting to order at 5:32. Thanks, folks. We will kick us off by, well, first of all, I just want to note we have a few new faces.
Recording in progress.
Don't be sorry, please. We're going to go ahead and just want to recognize we have some new faces on the team here, and maybe on the call as well. So, and forgive me if I pronounce, give me patience if I pronounce names incorrectly, please correct me. We have Brian Marksfield, Scooter Milne, pardon me, and Tina Thorson. Pardon me. If I could not look at letters differently, it would be good. So we're going to go ahead and do our, we're going to do call roll and do some introductions. So what I'm going to do is I will just check if you're here. You say you're here and tell us who you are, where you represent, and then we have an icebreaker. Have you ever been to a summer festival or concert, and who did you see or what did you see? So we'll give you a minute. We'll just put Rob in the hot seat since it.
Oh boy.
I'll let you kick us off so others have a chance to think. So name.
I'm Rob Zako. I'm the executive director of Better Eugene Springfield Transportation, or BETS for short. I've been doing these kinds of things for a long time. I don't know about a festival, but Garrison Keillor performed at the Cuthbert Theater many years ago, and that was fun to see him.
Thanks, Rob. Tina.
Tina Thorson, member at large, project coordinator at a civil engineering firm here in town. Summer concert was Def Leppard and Journey in the Gorge in Washington a few years ago. Yeah. Hi, everybody.
Oh, you're supposed to do that.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tiffany Edwards. I am with the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce. Happy to be here. Gosh, I've been to a lot, so maybe I'll just mention what I'm going to next week. I have a concert over in Bend. Jordan Davis, country music. Looking forward.
My name is Heather Buck. I'm Lane County Commissioner for District 5. This is my first time in person here, so hi everyone. I'm sure I've been to many concerts, but the last I can remember are the Springfield concerts during March.
We have to do.
All right, Jameson Norton, I'm gonna go with a future concert as well. We're gonna see Dave Matthews Band for the first time over in Bend.
Alma Fumiko Jesus, I use she, her pronouns. I work with United Way of Lane County, and I've been chosen to be your chair for this committee. The last concert I went to was Jay Boog at the McDonald Theater. He's a Hawaiian performer.
Pete Knox, I'm on the board of Lane Transit District. I used to live in Seattle. They had a festival called Bumbershoots every year, and I specifically tried to be out of town while that happened because I lived literally next to the Seattle Center. So, yeah.
I'm Scooter Milne, she, her. I'm a student leader over at Lane Community College. I haven't actually been to very many concerts at all. I think the only one I went to for the summer, quite a while ago, was Rush. It was pretty darn awesome.
Vidal Francis, Oregon Department of Transportation. I'm the Area 5 manager. And as far as, I'm gonna basically talk about a festival. You know, when I first came here to Oregon, my daughter was going to a school out in Cottage Grove, and one of her field trips was to attend a festival somewhere out, I don't know where. I still can't even remember the location, but it was here in Oregon. And everyone was dressed up like Shakespeare and, you know, had old style, and they had food set up, and I can't even remember exactly where it was and what the name of the festival was. But it was very nice to attend and watch. The scenery was great, and I really enjoyed it. It was actually my first time attending a festival here in Oregon, where you see people dressed up in these olden days or olden fashion ways. Pretty cool.
Thank you. Online we have Claire.
Hi, I'm Claire Syret. I'm a member at large, and I was also going to mention Prairie Home Companion coming to town to the Cuthbert was a great show, and I actually Garrison Keeler walked out into the gigantic audience there on the grass, and I actually got to shake his hand. So that was kind of fun.
You get me, Claire.
Thank you, folks, and thanks to Ally for that icebreaker. I just wanna, recognize we have, Gino, who's not here, Gino Grimaldi, Brian Marksfield, Counselor Evans, and Beth Blackwell. And looks like that's all we have. And, we do need, oh, let's see here. Trying to follow the agenda without jumping onto my script here, so, all right, perfect. Any adjustments to the agenda for anyone? Anyone? Did anybody else join us online? Thank you. All right, public comment?
No.
Thank you, Ally. All right, we're gonna go ahead and move into our updates, discussion, and presentations. First, we have Marty Gator, who is our co-chair of this committee, is leaving, has to move, and so we are looking for a vice chair for the SPC. And so, let's see if there's any nominations for vice chair for SPC, and I think we can do that even if we don't have the whole group here right now, right? So, is there anyone that wants to make a nomination of it? Anyone for SPC? I was going to nominate someone, but I want to give the committee a chance to.
I don't have any nominations. I'll just share that on the best board of directors. Mike Eister had been our vice president, and he rudely moved to Portland to be close to his grandkids, and he's also left this committee, so.
Yeah.
We haven't been able to replace him yet, so.
Appreciate that, Rob. I was gonna see, again, I'm gonna check and see if anyone, again, don't all jump out or raise your hands right now to be, vice chair or co-chair. Claire, would you be interested in the role?
I really appreciate the consideration. I just became president of the Eugene Parks Foundation board, and I really need to focus on that. So I'm going to have to decline at this time. And I was going to ask, if it's not out of order, if Tiffany would be willing to consider serving.
Well, thank you, Claire. That's very generous of you. I would be happy to serve as vice chair. I know that takes a back seat to the chair, so that's good. I would be happy to. So.
Claire, thank you for the recommendation, and I'm glad that you're here on this committee in that role that you're in with the Parks Foundation. That's really important for us. So thank you for continuing to be on this committee in that role. Rob?
I don't know if you're gonna call the question or ask for a motion or whatever, but might you just, I mean, is there some sort of statutory of what the responsibilities of the vice chair are? Or, you know, it might just be helpful to let Tiffany know what she's getting into. Is it just, are there when you're not there, or is there more to it than that?
From what I know, yeah, they're here when I'm not here to back up, but it's really what it is, and I usually try to make sure I can make every meeting I possibly can. So I think it's a pretty easy gig, but I don't know, maybe we'll see how it goes. Now that Tiffany's gonna be vice, we'll see how it goes. Okay, so to go through anyone, again, like checking in, making sure I'm being thoughtful about voice, no one else. All right, so I moved to actually Claire made the recommendation. Okay, Claire, do you want to go ahead and officially make the motion to appoint Tiffany to serve the remainder of the unexpired term as vice chair of the Strategic Planning Committee, expiring December 31st, 2025, upon approval of the CEO and consent of the LTD Board of Directors, pursuant to section 3.2B of the SPC bylaws?
So moved.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Tiffany is our vice chair. Thank you, Tiffany.
Wait, pursuant to something.
Pending board approval.
Yes.
Pursuant to the CEO and the board, and like, we're
Yes.
not really in charge of this. They're gonna tell us who our vice chair is.
So, okay, thank you, Tiffany. Pending board approval, you are in the not so hot seat, so thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, strategic planning committee meeting cadence. We have lots of new faces on the team, and so one of the things we're looking at is figuring out the timing for us to be able to meet. And it's always the most fun part of my job, trying to schedule really busy people. So we're gonna see how this works out. So with that, I'd like for us to take the best way for us to do this is to figure out what days maybe work or don't work. Are there deal breakers with days for folks? So maybe we can do the best we can. Ally and I will try to figure out. So I'll go ahead and start with Heather.
I think before days, how often are we meeting? Are we meeting monthly, bi-monthly?
Yeah, I think in our bylaws, it's bi-monthly, but I think we also have been, one of the things we've done is if there is a time where we did not need to meet, we would cancel meetings and modify. So that has come up before, but bi-monthly is what's in our bylaws. Good question. Thank you for asking that. Tiffany.
Thank you. I have a conflict on Tuesdays. I want to say it's the second and fourth Tuesday of the month for the City of Eugene Planning Commission. And so, I can meet any other Tuesday or Wednesday. Those 2 days. And it's flexible sometimes because sometimes we don't meet in both of those, but just wanted to put that out there that if there could be an occasional conflict if there will be.
But Tiffany, isn't today the second Tuesday?
It is. I'm
But you're here.
currently not here. Yeah.
Thank you, Tiffany.
I'm here, yes.
Anyone else? Any other conflicts with schedules?
Question I have, are we still maintaining the 5:30 to 6:50, is that the same time frame?
I think that's what we're looking at right now, and I want to be thoughtful about staff too, because you're all thinking that.
Yeah, no, I think I'm fine, that's all.
Claire, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I wasn't quite clear on the question.
We are looking at, I guess right now, what dates or is there a date that we can't meet monthly as a team? And Tiffany has the second and fourth Tuesdays as a conflict. So I'm checking to see if there's conflicts. So I'd like to give that to Ally so that we can you all can look at that as well. The
Got
staff.
it. I do not have any standing meetings that would create a conflict.
Okay.
I have one, second Wednesday of every month.
Actually, but Tiffany and I all have that conflict.
We should probably mention that, yeah.
That's the monthly Lang Act meeting, and is an
Third. Date time.
As a still student, once we get into the fall, Fridays, probably not great because I'll probably be turning projects.
Pretty sure staff is probably happy to say we're not gonna be at 5.
I would like to finish you, but. I would like to finish you, but.
And where you're fine, yes.
Okay, so we have,
You're welcome.
second and fourth Tuesdays, no, second Wednesday, no, and third Thursday, no, and no Fridays. Okay,
I would add, they're not really good. You'll. It's just choose the second, fourth. That's right.
does everyone feel good about the first or the third Tuesday? Okay, perfect. I'm just looking really quick just to make sure on my calendar, because, all right, let's,
Or
no one is downstairs. I just want to make a double check on my calendar. Tuesday. Ally will get us a calendar invite and we'll be all set. Okay, that was a lot less painful than I thought it was going to be. Thank you all for being able to make that work.
One last question.
Yes,
Is that gonna start immediately or?
good question. Yes, okay, immediately. Thank you, Ally.
Thank you.
Wonderful. All right, moving on to our community outreach framework, which we're really excited to dig into the meat of this meeting right now, so we're gonna pass the baton over.
Well, hi there, I'll start quickly. My name is Dave Roth. I'm the new Director of Mobility Planning and Policy with LTD. I'll drop the new part now. And I'll just quickly introduce this because my name is on the agenda, but I'm here with Pat Walsh, as well as going to lead us through the presentation. So this is, we're bringing forward the final framework for engagement that we've spent the last series of months working on with the community steering committee, and some of you have already heard this before. I think what we'll do is we'll run through a presentation that's already been provided just for the benefit of our new members, and then we'll be seeking recommendation from the strategic planning committee that we can bring forward to the board in August to adopt the new framework. So I'll stop there.
Great. Thanks, Dave. Chair and board members, my name is Pat Walsh. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Lane Transit District. The community outreach and communications assessment began about a year ago. And it really came into being to answer one question, and that is how it is we can do a better job on the front end of our initiatives and projects to engage the community. As most of you know, there's a lot of times, particularly when you go to a public meeting, where you come in with a problem, you come in with 3 solutions, and half the people in the room think there's already a decision made. And so and we know that that's not true, but we also have to respect that those folks' perception. The goal of the communications, or the community outreach and communications assessment, is to get ahead of that curve and get people involved at the beginning of things, as opposed to later on in the process. So that's really the problem that we're working to solve with what we call the COCA. So what we did is, next slide, please, is we sat down with some consultants of ours, InfraStrategies, and said, how do we do a better job of this? So they looked at some best practices research, and then after looking at that, we went ahead and began to engage the community. We did some background interviews with about 10 or 12 individuals in the community from around the district to find out their impressions of how it is we can do a better job of communicating and engaging. We had a public survey that we launched that went out into the community, and we got several hundred responses to that helped us inform things. And then we created a steering council, which we publicized widely. People could apply to be on the council. We had almost 80 applicants. We only had 20 slots. So we were able to pick people to be on that committee from around the area. And we looked at folks that don't normally participate in the public process. We looked at folks whose voices we don't hear a lot from. So it was very intentional that we had a diverse group, and people engaged. Our chair was Amber Coel from Springfield, who I believe is an engineer, and Daniel Palencia, who works for Bike Fridays. So we had really a large group of folks participate in this. That group met initially 6 times, and those meetings were led by our consultants. Staff was not involved. So there was no agenda being driven by anybody on the staff. We had to sit up against the wall and answer questions if asked. And this group really worked well and worked independently. And that's where the recommendations came in. One of those recommendations was after the steering council had met those 6 times, is for us to do one more community outreach meeting. And that was to engage community-based organizations. And so we had one more focus group or roundtable discussion with them, again, to ask them how it is we can do a better job of engaging them in our initiatives and our projects farther on the front end than we had previously. So I'll take you through some of the information that we learned from our various tools that we deployed. But, as you can see with our public survey results, we had about 65% of the respondents were not aware of any LTD projects. So I mean, in some ways you kind of go, wow, on the other hand, you go, what a great opportunity, you know, to be able to reach people. And 30% of people didn't know how to give feedback. So 20% didn't think their feedback would make a difference. So by looking at those numbers, and certainly some we're gonna look at here, with background interviews, we have a target-rich environment in order to engage the community and have them become part of LTD, and for us to become a deeper part of the people, lives that we serve. In our background interviews, we really found that we needed to be first focus on developing and communicating the challenges that LTD is trying to address before proposing solutions. That kind of gets back to the other things. There was also a desire for our board to be more active in the community. And then given the funding sources of the business community, what we found from those folks was that, you know, they should have a bigger say in transportation planning decisions. Whether they should or not, that's their impression and their belief. And, you know, we want to make sure that we're not just looking at the narrow focus on financial return on businesses in terms of what they get in exchange for their contributions to through employer and employee taxes into our coffers, but also what is the overall good for the community. So it can't just be driven by who pays the most, I guess was what we were getting at, they were getting at. And that we can do more to boost its boosters and build a coalition of supporters. We need to be more proactive in the community more regularly and meet with people when, not just when we need something, but when other people need things too, when we can be part of their solutions as well. You know, this ad hoc steering committee, as I mentioned, was really a first of its kind within the industry. We've not been able to find anybody anywhere that's doing what we're doing in order to better engage the community with this by forming the steering committee. And as I said, you know, we have about 20 people, we have 20 people on board. We paid them a stipend, you know, so they could show and be able to have our 6 meetings and plus 2 more here after the first of the year as we got into more recommendations and that sort of thing. What we heard from the steering community steering council was that for us to really do a better job of defining transportation mobility priorities and guiding principles for community engagement is what came from this group. And they also provided us some strategies for engagement and some other priorities and trade-offs for engagement, which are all in our plan that you have at your desk. Based on those groups' recommendations, we really came up with some guiding principles for our community engagement. And they really fall under 4 categories: style, there's a list under there, content, process, and then what our intent is. And I'm going to give you a second just to look through those, and if you've got any questions, feel free to ask me. Rob.
Actually, Pat, if you can sort of like prompt the change, you know, you're out of sync with the slides here, so I think.
Oh, I am?
Yeah,
I'm
just
sorry.
let her know sort of when you're going to the next slide, and we'll know.
That's,
there you go.
That's great. It's my last public meeting, and I should have known that.
That's great.
Good. All right.
You're synced.
We're saying thanks. So like I said, those are our 4, and then here we are with our guiding principles. If you've got any questions, you can ask me. And then we looked at some of our stakeholder groups too that were identified throughout this research. And as you can see, that's a broad group of folks that all require us to foster relationships with them based on trust and engage and through regular engagement. Next slide. So these are some of the emerging tactics and strategies and tactics that came out from more of the groups. And like I said, I can read all this, but I think I'll just give you guys a second to take a peek. You know, one of the things I will say is another theme that just came over and over again is that we really have to engage the community, not just when we need something, but we've got to build coalitions with folks. And that's exciting work. It's also helps not only raise our vote, but it raises the entire community's vote when we work together like that. Next slide, please. And then this was a sort of this is our strategy pyramid. As we know, trust is at the basis of everything. Communicating clearly and frequently is important. It aids in building that trust and of course engage in collaborative, honest conversations. And one of the focuses, we have to focus on the people we're serving, we're riding the bus, the people we want to ride the bus, which is everyone, so. Let's see, next slide, please. These are sort of our strategy and tactic prioritization. You know, we have to, part of our work is to engage our stakeholders. Everything we do is contingent upon our other government partners. We have buses, but the city and county have streets. So we have to work hand in hand with them and make sure that we understand their needs and they understand ours, so we can work well together. Always getting ahead of the story is one of the things we've been talking about. That's the whole thrust of this work, is to be able to do that. And then be present with riders. You know, riders, passengers and customers of any organization, you know, the key thing is you just don't want to serve them, you want to take care of them, you want to know. You want them to know you and some of that. So we have to, so to build that trust, to build that value in the community, we have to continue to reach out to our passengers and listen to what it is they have to say about our service and work to develop service that meets them where they are. And then we also always have to engage the potential opposition. There's always naysayers, and that's great. You learn a lot from naysayers, frankly. Those are not bad conversations to have. But we have to be proactive in terms of how we go out and we meet those folks where they are. So that's sort of the basics of the of where we came from with how we got started, where we are with the recommendations. Next slide, please. And then this has been our schedule. As you can see, we started about a year ago, and then this is the work that we've done over that time. And of course, we're in the mid-spring, almost summer here with our framework that we're presenting to you, and then it'll go to the board in August. So with that, are there any questions that Dave and I can answer?
Go ahead, Rob.
I'll start with a couple of questions, and this is a good slide to look at. Do you have any recommendations coming forward from the Community Steering Council or from the Roundtable of Community-Based Organizations? What did they think?
Well, go ahead.
Well, in terms of the overall framework?
Yeah.
I mean, I can quickly summarize the last meeting, and again, I wasn't along for the whole ride. I did attend the last community steering committee meeting, and the unanimous support we received for the framework was clearly evident. We did have a few minor grammatical changes to the actual framework, and one of the substantive changes I think was just adding in a couple of additional stakeholders, because if you look at the framework, there's a pretty extensive list of stakeholders that we've identified. So we added a couple of those,
Yeah.
and but otherwise it was supported. And
I think that it'd be a more granular level. The key thing is to get out early and often with people. That's the mandate, and not just when you need something. It's to be engaged. And I think of everything that I think came out of that, I think that is probably maybe the key message, or certainly one of the top 2 or 3, that we have to do that, which means we have to be proactive in our work. We've got to use the communications channels that we have that are available to us. And LTD is not really buses. LTD is about people. The community has to see our people and see us in terms of how it is we're serving, and we have to listen and make things go.
Thank you. One more follow-up question. I have a feeling deja vu. I'm sure that this group discussed this a couple months ago. I think there was a public comment period, Beth submitted written comments. Are there any major changes the last couple months, or is it, as you said, just really sort of typos and adding a few stakeholder groups, or just really sort of minor things?
Since the last time we presented, and Tom Schwartz did the presentation with one of our consultants, there really hasn't been anything substantive that I would say that would require, nothing, just been the grammatical things and a little tweak here and there. I think one of the things I didn't say, one of the great things about this, I think, is that this group of 20 people have asked to continue to be engaged. That when we've got a project, that we bring it to them and we say, what do you think? Not just about the project, but what about the project, but what do we need to know to make this project a good project, or if we should even do the project. You know what I mean? I mean, that's what, and that request came from those folks. It wasn't from us or staff. They said, we want to get together more often, you know, and talk. So we're trying to figure out a cadence of that, whether it's on an as-needed basis, it's quarterly, or it's twice a year. We want to keep those folks engaged, because we get great feedback from them.
Is that Claire?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So I don't have any questions. Well, I have one question, but I have some observations. And I think the last time we had this presentation, I also gave kudos, and I continue to give kudos. I think your 20-person steering committee is great, and the fact that you're not finding this to be a thing that other transit agencies are doing, I think is really amazing that, you know, we are being leaders in this respect. I also want to observe the fact that you had 80 applicants means that there are people who want to engage with LTD, right? That's a lot of enthusiasm in my mind. I think the offering of the stipends is super important and great. I really liked the guiding principles that were landed on. And I think another benefit of engaging partners is in that work of building trust. Partner organizations also are people who are writers, and the people they represent or connect are also potential writers. So that is another way to create more ridership. And, you know, in the work that I do, working with union members, you know, organizing 101 is that engaging when you aren't coming with an ask is a key aspect to building trust. Because you're building a relationship without a demand or an ask or something along those lines. You're just there engaging in the relationship. And that's a super important way to build trust for when you do have an ask, or there might be a difficult conversation that needs to be engaged in. So one question I have is, I saw that one of the pieces in the guiding principles was closing the loop with folks. And I was wondering, what were some of the ways that you guys were considering to achieve that piece?
That's a great question. You know, I think I don't think I know and believe that that's part of building trust and part of the communications cycle. So, you know, it's one thing to be in a meeting and say, hey, I think we're going to do this. It's another thing to come back and say, you know what, we are going to do it, or we're not going to do it, and here's why. And I think it's about for us, I think internally it's about holding each other accountable when we actually do that. And then I think what we'll have to do is look at what the best communications channels are to let people know in a broad way, but also if you get a call from the community organization member or someone that you actually follow up and make those determinations. I think it's pretty micro in most ways, and it has to have a broader component to it based on what the issue is or what the follow-up is. But the closing the loop is critical, because as we all know, the absence of information means nothing's happening. So that's the deal. We've got to slam the door on closing the loop for sure.
Yeah, and also if someone is giving input or asking a question and they're not getting a response, it's going into a black hole. Then that also, you know, doesn't serve the building of trust.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. I was really, just want to say, I thought this was great work, and it was very well presented and very easy to digest, and I was really pleased to see all this. But I had one question, and it was really specific to the board engagement with the community, which I'm a huge supporter of, always have been. And I'm just kind of curious how you envision that. Is that a process? I mean, as we know, those board members are appointed by the governor. And so kind of, you know, setting expectations all the way back at that point. I'm just kind of curious if you have a plan for their individual engagement, or even how, you know, what that might look like, if you've given that thought.
No, I understand. I really think that's one of those things is, as we get into these recommendations with the board, we're gonna have to work with them to figure out how best to implement that strategy. And I'm not really in a position to comment right now on what that might look like, because we really need to talk with the rest of the board members about what they think about it.
Thank you.
Rob?
Tiffany, you really get me too. You stole my point, or let me add to your point. Overall, I think this is a great plan, and I support this. I'll make some comments in a moment, but I think the board engaging with the community is particularly challenging because of public meetings laws. And what we've seen from the community is we communicate with the board and we hear nothing back because they're told not to communicate back with the community because that would be sealed communications or whatever. So, and I'm not questioning the law of that, but I think just as a practical matter, having the board engage with the community is something that needs to be addressed in a particular way. But insofar as the board is kind of the representatives or face of the organization, it's really important, you know, to find a way to do that. And so I would say that that's an open question. Am I kind of getting at maybe what you were getting at, or?
I think a little bit. I think more, I guess I have some ideas, just
Okay.
having, you know, thought through some of that and worked internally and trying to figure out the best places to plug them in. And, you know, not everybody has the same interest when it comes to that, and that's what might always be a challenge. But I think for those who do want to be, I think that being able to support them. I know Pete's a great example of somebody who really likes to be out in the community and representing LTD, and the board isn't probably expected to be the technical experts. You know, I think that there's a lot that they could be potentially asked about, but to be able to arm them with resources, but also the kinds of questions that come up or whatnot, just have a way for them to be helpful.
Yeah, good points.
We've got a dynamic board, I gotta tell you, and, you know, we've not formalized, this approach, but it is happening. I got a call one day from, I went down to Cottage Grove and I met with Heather Murphy. And she says, well, I got 7 questions to ask you. She asked me 7 questions. I said, where is this coming from? She says, I'm going to South Eugene Neighbors tonight. I said, oh, okay. Is staff going with you? No, I'm going by myself. So that true story, you know, our board, this board will engage. Kelly Sutherland, we met with the Santa Clara neighborhood, River Road neighborhood a few months ago. We're gonna go back and meet with them. She's gonna come and speak. Pete is always out and about. Almost the mayor of Eugene Station, the operators and all the customers and all. So this board is certainly out and about. Again, we've not, you know, formalized an approach that way, but they do know the power and value of being engaged.
Pete, you want to say, Chair?
Like, Jameson, obviously can talk about the other board members, and as a board member, I try to get out there myself as much as I absolutely can. I talk to as many people as I possibly can, and you know, this public engagement is something that's incredibly near and dear to my heart, as it were, in one of my things that I think is one of the most important things we're doing right now, and I really appreciate this plan, by the way. And I also have gone to a couple of neighborhoods, including my own, and talked about LTD, and so, I'm happy to do that, and I suspect other board members that, they have varying levels of time and energy to do those things, but I think we have a fairly active board currently. Now, how that's gonna shake out in the future as people move on and we get new people, I don't know. But, this plan is for the entire organization, and I hope the board, future board members, are engaged with the community as much as we try to be.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this, but, from the perspective I'm looking at, based on at least what I'm hearing, I think most people, for them, it's a matter of access. Yeah, it's a matter of they have an opportunity or the ability to be able to either provide comment or talk to or see or hear what that, the direction messaging that's coming from LTD coming from the board. And so from an access perspective, I think if we can look at it that way, do the board members, or does the public have access to the board members? And I think that would go a long ways with what we're trying to achieve in terms of making them available for folks who have people.
Check if anyone else has any other comments. Rob?
I don't wanna take too many bites of the apple, but I do wanna sort of close this up if nobody else has anything to add.
I was gonna have one last thing to add, but is there something else that you wanted to?
Well, I mean,
this?
we did discuss this a couple months ago, there was a public comment period, Pastor Smith, we didn't comments on this, so I'll just repeat myself. But, from a sort of high level policy level that I think that we're operating at, the board's operating at, the plan for me boils down to this, the guiding principles. Two-way dialogue, accessible, respectful, active listening, data-driven, clarity of purpose, fiscal transparency, outcome-oriented, feedback loop, benchmarking, adaptable, meaningful, community-first mentality. There's nothing, I mean, I agree with all of that. I think that's great. I think those are great principles. So I support this plan. I urge the board to adopt this plan. I would just comment and say, although those are great principles, that's not always how the organizations operate. I think that this is sort of a more enlightened direction that I support. And I also, as I said before, I think the proof is in the pudding. You know, principles are sort of what we strive for, we're trying to do. Saying that's one thing, actually doing it requires doing it. But the question before us tonight is, do we recommend this for the board? I would say yes, absolutely.
Thanks, Rob. And I echo the sentiments of the team. Just as LTD has been going through this process, I have heard, and I was trying to be mindful, is it because I'm in this committee that I hear more about this, or is it because people are telling me? And I was hearing from the community, some of the folks specifically in that stakeholder group, that reached out and basically they were asking me if I was going to be at this meeting because they knew I was associated with LTD. So it's exciting to hear people talking about this more. And since I got on this committee specifically, I feel like I've heard a lot more. I've just heard more out in the ether. So, and in a positive way, and in LTD as a solutions-oriented organization. So this just gets me excited. So I firmly believe that these principles are helping us toward that North Star of turning LTD from, we're not just about buses or about people. And this gets me excited about that, right? So it's like these are the directions toward that North Star. So I think that's one of the things about the SBC. Our goal is to be able to help support and hold the board accountable to these guiding principles. So appreciate everybody sharing. So that's my lens on this. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else, Pat and team? Well, Dave, you're still in it's you next for our long-term, long-range mobility plan project briefing.
You might need a motion.
Yeah, do we need to, sorry. Go ahead, the motion.
I would be happy to move that the strategic planning committee recommend adoption to the LTD board of directors.
Second?
Second.
Tina seconds. All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. We'll go to the board. Thank you. Thanks, Tiffany. So David, how you can you? I'm just pushing us in different directions. I was so excited to get through us figuring out a schedule that I'm just.
That was really important.
Thank you.
So once again, Dave Roth, Director of Mobility Planning and Policy with LTD. Good to be in front of you, Chair and committee members. So the next item here is on LTD's long-range mobility plan. And this is really a perfect segue from the last item because when you go into a long-range planning process, such as this, engagement is really a critical foundational piece. And so having the outreach framework now in place, we can use that to build our engagement strategy for this really important project. You can go to the next slide. So I'm gonna just kind of loosely follow my presentation here. So, so what is a long-range mobility plan? Well, it will help define transit's role in the broader community. I'm just gonna give you some bullet points here. It helps transit providers such as LTD and their partners comply with the Transportation Planning Rule, or TPR, which you may or may not have heard about. And I'll get into a little bit more detail there later. It supports, or would support LTD in strategically planning for service and capital investments that meet provider and community goals. It will serve to strengthen coordination between LTD and our partners among or across multiple planning processes. It provides an opportunity to evaluate the impacts of growth and land use changes on the transit system. It creates an opportunity to explore alternative futures, and it increases our ability and the community's ability to obtain funding and public support for needed transit investments. So where are we today? So today we have an adopted long-range transit plan. This is it. If you haven't seen it already, it's available on LTD's website. And this was adopted back in March of 2014. And so it's been some years, it's been about a decade, yeah, since this was adopted. And a lot has changed in that time, no doubt. This plan, the long-range transit plan, really what this did was this established a set of goals and policies to guide the agency over the next decade, and it has served that purpose well. It also established the concept of a frequent transit network, and that's something that we've been working towards in that time. So, but what this is missing right now is really sort of a deeper look at our capital and service needs over a 20-year time horizon. So that's going to be a big focus of this next planning effort. And that will result in a 20-year project list for us, something to guide a lot of our other work. So again, in time since this was adopted, a lot has changed. The communities have grown and changed. Planning mandates from the state have new planning mandates have come around, and in the recent future we have the recent past, the climate friendly and equitable communities rulemaking was put in place, and that's going to have a very big impact on cities as well as transit providers within those cities. And this plan, the new plan, the update will be responsive to those. Also, we have a broader mobility management focus for the agency. So of course, we're focused on bus service, but we're thinking about mobility beyond simply bus service, and the new plan will get into that area in a lot more depth than the previous plan. And finally, as I mentioned before, there's a need, really a big need for us to have a 20-year capital project and service outlook that can inform our long-range financial plan, our annual budget, the community investment plan development, as well as to inform and better align with our partners with their transportation system plans and the MPO's regional transportation plan. It will also help us understand and how to prioritize what sorts of grant funding that we go after as an agency. So I wanted to get into a little more detail on the TPR, which I mentioned before. So in terms of the statewide planning goals, goal 12 is around transportation, and the transportation planning rules, part of the Oregon administrative rules, which guides how that statewide goal is implemented. The TPR requires cities, counties, and the state to have transportation system plans. Those are long-range plans similar to this. The difference for a transit agency is that we're not required to have one of these. We're going to do one, but the cities and counties are, and by having, this plan, we'll be able to better coordinate with our partners. Transportation system plans at whatever level, city, county, or state, they're designed to support a variety of modes, so residents are not limited in the ways that they can access jobs, goods, and services throughout the community. And that's a really important point. In Oregon, transportation plans have to be multimodal. You have to be thinking about non-auto modes for how people get around. So more recently, with the introduction of a climate-friendly and equitable communities rulemaking, this changes the TPR and changes requirements for cities, counties, in the state for how we do transportation planning and long-range planning. And why are we doing the new CFAC rules? Well, the transportation sector is responsible for about 30% overall of CO2 emissions in Oregon. And we have not been making sufficient progress to reduce that over time. And so we have to change the rules that we abide by to start making more progress in that area. Anyhow, the rules require local governments to plan for greater development in transit corridors and downtowns. There's a key linkage to transit, so we're going to be a part of that solution for our city partners. They're required to prioritize system performance measures that achieve community livability goals. So how are we measuring performance of our transportation systems? And this is really referring back to the transportation system plans and not so much our plan, but cities are going to be required to demonstrate performance outside of the sort of historical volume to capacity and throughput measures that have been used to measure systems. And I think we'll see a much stronger connection to transit and people trips as a performance measure going forward. Prioritize investments for reaching destinations specifically by walking, bicycling, and transit. Again, the transit connection. Planning for and managing parking to meet demonstrated demand. And you've seen recently many cities in Oregon now, in response to CFAC, have eliminated parking requirements for new development. And transit is a key solution and other mobility options that LTD will be involved with for meeting the mobility needs of people living in new developments in areas that don't have much, if any, parking available. Planning for needed infrastructure for electric vehicle charging, and then regularly monitoring and reporting progress. So I mentioned this before, so unlike cities and counties, we're not required by the TPR to have our own long-range system plans. However, cities, TSPs must include a transit element or chapter within their plans. And this will be a great coordinating tool for us, for our city partners that we'll be working with. And we're out ahead of them as they get into their CFAC required updates. We will be able to have a document that helps them with their planning work as they get into their TSP updates to hopefully make for stronger transit elements of their own TSPs, which will further support our work. So developing our long-range mobility plan now creates an opportunity for us to lead the conversations about how transit can deliver on critical outcomes, not just the CFAC required ones that I spoke about, but also thinking about outcomes simply beyond simply ridership, things like health, housing, workforce, and education outcomes within our communities. All right, so to facilitate the needed plan update, LTD applied for a transportation and growth management grant, which is through the state of Oregon, through ODOT and the Department of Land Conservation and Development. We were awarded $250,000 from the state for our application, and we'll also be bringing another $50,000 to the project to get this going. Right now, well, the way that these TGM funded grants work, this is too much detail for you, but I'll share it anyway. It's managed by ODOT, and ODOT pays the consultants directly in support of our work. So it's sort of a simpler process for us to procurement process for us to go through. I just want to run through some specific objectives of our planning process, and these are listed in our draft statement of work that we're developing with our ODOT project managers right now. So we want to, again, getting back to the communications framework, engage in a collaborative, honest, and transparent two-way conversation with our community and key stakeholders around mobility need and required investments over the 20-year time horizon. And I've already made reference to the outreach framework in our statement of work. So when that gets handed off to our consultants, they'll know where to start, and they'll use that outreach framework to build the engagement plan for this project. So we'll update our goals and policies. As I mentioned, that's a big part of this plan that we have in place now, and to make them more consistent with our broader mobility management concept. We'll assess transit level of service to identify where additional transit services and related capital investments are needed. We'll assess the connections between transit and land use and identify actions to improve support of adopted land use plans, particularly those related to CPAC administrative rules. We'll identify opportunities to meet the mobility needs of our underserved populations and provide access to destinations that are important to these populations. And we'll enhance coordination with other transit mobility service providers to provide seamless access to transit and mobility options regionally. It'll provide strategic guidance, again, to capital improvements, as I mentioned before. We'll investigate a range of options for providing transit service, including fixed route, express, BRT, on-demand services, van pools, microtransit, and shared mobility options, so on and so forth. We'll identify priority transit investments and a 20-year capital list, and we'll create logical linkages between the long-range mobility plan and our regularly updated plans, including but not limited to, again, the strategic business plan, the long-range financial plan, annual budget, CIP, and our service reviews, our system reviews, including the system reviews that are underway right now. So that's for my summary. I wanted to show this graphic. Yeah, I think we go to the next slide. Thanks, Ali. So this is kind of busy, but I think you have this in your packets. If you don't, we can get a copy for you. But this graphic sort of shows the relationship mostly from a project perspective, and again, getting back to that 20-year project list. So we have the long-range mobility plan up in the left-hand corner here, and that provides the 20-year horizon needs for the organization. That feeds into, as I mentioned, our strategic business plan, our annual budget, our long-range financial plan, and the community investment plan. And then its relationship to other plans and processes within the region. So our project list, once developed, will feed into the regional transportation plan, and the regional transportation plan is a compilation of all of the cities' project needs, as well as ODOT's project needs in the region, all combined into a 20-year list of projects. So you see the TSPs feeding into there as well. Those are then programmed into the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Plan, or program rather, with the MTIP, which is a 4-year program, and that's the priority funded projects that will ultimately end up on the bottom right-hand corner, which is the statewide transportation improvement program. And these are the federally funded projects that are set to be built over a 4-year time period. So that's sort of like the capital list of projects that will be built, and the STIP is managed by ODOT. The STIP is also influenced by the Oregon Transportation Plan, which I referenced earlier, which is the state's long-range transportation system plan. So that's a summary. And you see the little boxes around the long-range mobility plan, sort of talks about the planning process that we'll go through. So that's the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions. I hope I didn't confuse you with this graphic here.
I like the graphic. It's helpful to kind of put in place, and I'm glad you shared, and then you showed us the graphic. It's like it coalesced everything. So for me at least. Rob, go ahead.
I like the graphic too, because you're gonna make it easier for me to make my point. First, let me say, that I appreciate the direction this is going, so focusing on mobility, it's in line with sort of the rethinking of LTD and serving the community and people focused. You know, what you said, this versus the long range transit plan all makes sense. That said, and this is some tough love, there's way too much planning that goes on, and the public has no idea. Just in LT, you mentioned the long range transit plan, the long range mobility plan, the community investment plan, the long range financial plan, the whatever, there's movie ahead, there's transit tomorrow, the system review. The public just sort of sees your LTD, what are you gonna do, and why you're always planning. So the point I'm gonna say, the tough love, is going back to the community outreach framework. One of the principles is clarity of purpose, you know, and is there a particular, are you developing a plan for reporting purposes? And that's sometimes the case, like the MTIP, that's not what's happening here. Or is there a particular decision that you're wanting to make? And can you frame that as a question? And can you summarize this whole plan as an answer to a question that LTD and the community needs to ask and answer? So I just challenge you, maybe not now, but sort of, can you distill it down of what is the purpose of this plan and how does it differ, or why you need this plan in addition to all the other plans that you have?
It's a great question and great feedback as well. So if I could distill it down, I know I spoke a lot there. It's our goals and policies for the agency, and it's our project list, our long range project list. If I could distill it down into something very simple, that's ultimately what.
Frame it with the question at the end. What's the question you're asking?
The question, Rob, is what do we need to be for the next 50 years?
Okay.
I mean, so this helps frame that out on where we go and how we get there.
Is that different from strategic plan?
Yeah, as you told me as I walked in the door here a year and a half ago, I'm gonna remind you, the long range plan needs to be updated. And this is it. The strategic business plan isn't tied to a long range plan. So it's a tactical 3-year plan, essentially.
Okay.
So this is important for us to answer the question of we know what we've been the first 50 years, where do we need to go for the next 50 years? And then the strategic business plan will tie to that in smaller chunks.
Strategy versus implementation.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other reflections or questions from the committee?
Like it, Bracken. They help. I like pictures.
Yeah. Well, and I feel
That's
like
good.
just hearing again, recognizing, being a nonprofit, I feel like there's complexity. And then when I get to talk to people in the public sector, I realize, maybe there's a little less complexity. But again, I do appreciate this because there are many moving parts and there's a piece of a piece of a piece, and it feels like it should be cascading, but recognize, again, with this graphic, it's not necessarily cascading, it's one begets the other, it feeds this. So again, really very graphical, visual, so I really appreciate that, and also recognizing the complexity. I appreciate the question, Rob, just to kind of help understand a little bit more about what piece is what and how that piece fits in. So kind of hearing from Jameson about, we have the sort of our big map of where we're trying to go, and then the business plan is like chunks, because you need to be a little bit more nimble, from what I understand. With the business plan, you have to modify for what's going on in the community right now and the next couple of years. So I appreciate that clarity on that.
Maybe if I could just go back to Rob's fund, I appreciate that. Thank you, Alma. So I think also, as I'm reflecting on the conversation here, you know, you asked, you know, we do all this planning, like, you know, there's a lot going on. So what does it mean? So I think, you know, this plan, if we do this well, this can make the thread between our kind of goals and strategies, our long-term vision for the organization, and how things end up on our community investment plan. Like, what are we actually spending money on? And right now, that thread is broken. And I think, you know, you're speaking to the confusion in the community about, like, you're doing all this planning work, what does it all mean? This plan, if we do it well, we can make that thread run through everything, and you'll know, why did something end up on the community investment plan? Well, you know, it started here on the long range plan. This is the direction we're setting for the agency, and that's how we're moving forward. Hopefully that helps.
Just, I support this. I know,
Yeah.
you know that I want us to be successful. It's a good direction. But I'm also providing feedback. Before the pandemic, LTD and its partners were engaged in at the same time, moving ahead in Transit Tomorrow. And I went to repeated work sessions of the Eugene City Council, and those policymakers couldn't understand. They just saw it as the plan for LTD, and they didn't know which was which. And there wasn't a clarity of purpose there. And if our policymakers don't have that clarity of purpose, how can the public have that clarity of purpose? And so I'm just challenging you to sort of be really clear on what you're asking, what you're trying to do, you know, and how things relate. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other comments? Vidal?
Yeah, just a couple of comments here, and thanks for doing this. The long-range mobility plan, 20-year horizon, how often are you gonna, not necessarily revisit, but look at that?
I think if we want to get more in line with, say, what a city does with their TSP, you're looking at a 5 or 6 year update cycle.
Okay.
It's not unusual though for these to extend out a little bit longer. And there also might be a time where the plan needs to be amended for some reason. Yeah.
Good, because I mean, there's lots of events that happen throughout the course of being here, if you will, that could affect that, or at least our outlook on what we want to look at in the next 20 years that could change our direction in some form or fashion. I mean, and I also want to say too, you know, I've had opportunity to look at some of the cities, their transit plan, if you will, and obviously the largest cities tend to have more, let's just say, meat in there, and some of the smaller cities tend to have less to none, if you will, in there. And I think at least having your plan, if you will, and having this, if possible, available to, I'd say all the cities, actually aid that communication on what, how do I say, what continuity they may have along with LTD that they can supplement with their plan in trying to achieve the same goals, if you will, that LTD is trying to achieve. So I think that's really good. And one last comment, and I know that everybody's looking at the board there, and it looks like it's static, but it's really moving. These plans change over time and adjust, and so it's really moving, although they're looking static right there. So that's another complexity that's in there too.
Thank you. Yeah, I just to acknowledge your point on cities TSPs, oftentimes the transit element within a TSP is very light. It just might list out what transit routes exist in a community. And so I'm hoping that we can make something that's a tool that cities can use. So appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Do we need to make a motion for this? Or is kind of a briefing today, so.
Yeah, just briefing it, and I'll just share timeline wise. So I think maybe there's another slide with the timeline, Ally. Yeah, so right now we're finalizing the scope of work so that we can move forward into the consultant selection process. And actually, I do have one thing to ask of you tonight. So I'm looking for one volunteer from the SPC who can join in the consultant selection committee. So that's one thing I would like to take away tonight.
Rob's raising his hand to participate.
I dodged the vice president, Lily, so I can do that.
Thank you, Rob. Make us proud.
Okay, so that will entail a couple of 1-hour meetings. And once we get into consultant selection, the project we should be able to kick this off like end of summer, early fall. It just depends on the ODOT procurement process. Thank you.
I don't have my digital packet with me. I have the printed one, and I saw the slides from the earlier community outreach framework presentation, but all your presentation here is in this packet.
We'll
So just make sure that we get that digitally would be great. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Tina.
It's a formality because Rob has stepped up, but again, as a formality, I work in transportation planning and design, and there is a chance my employer would submit for the RFP. So I would need to recuse myself from any consideration of consultant selection.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. No one else has any other, again, appreciate that, Tina, making sure conflicts of interest. All right. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Tiffany?
No, no, no,
Oh.
I'm turning it off.
Okay. Sorry, extra sensitive. Thank you, Dave, appreciate that. All right, so it looks like there is nothing else, on the agenda right now, so we can call our meeting, we can adjourn at 6:42.
Next meeting would be the first Tuesday in August. Tentatively, to be confirmed,
We will confirm.
Yeah.
To make sure, we'll give you a nod to confirm.
just.
Thank you, Rob. I didn't want to say anything on the record until we get 100% confirmation. All right, we're gonna go ahead and adjourn at 6:42, and we will get back to you with the next meeting date. Thank you all for your help.